Chapter 15. Had she passed away? Maggie asked. Then her eyes drifted toward the wall clock. I watched her closely. Something about the restlessness hidden beneath her expression set off an alarm inside my head. Well, she wasn't dead yet, I replied. Maggie's eyes narrowed. What do you mean she wasn't? The doctor said he was sorry. He did, I answered. But he meant something else. Your grandmother was dying, but she had not died yet. The doctor simply chose his words carefully. My gaze wandered briefly toward the doorway before returning to her. A deep breath filled the silence between us. What time does Fred normally come home? I asked. Maggie folded her arms. Of course this isn't normal. There has to be a reason he's staying out this late. The frustration in her voice was impossible to miss. I raised a hand, asking her to calm down. She ignored the gesture. Stress isn't good for the baby, I said quietly. Maggie immediately rose to her feet. It was obvious she had reached the end of her patience. Really? She snapped. Is that the best point you can make? It's past midnight. And if it weren't for these mysterious stories you've been telling me, I wouldn't still be awake. Her voice echoed through the room. I slowly stood as well. For once, I refused to retreat. Maggie looked at me as though weighing me against every decision I had ever made. So you truly think I invented all of this? I asked. My face carried a seriousness that surprised even me, yet beneath it the mother inside me remained. Maggie glanced at me once before turning toward the bedroom. You can't just walk away, I said. She stopped. Then she turned back. My eyes drifted toward the curve of her 3-month pregnancy. Immediately, some of my tension faded. She noticed where I was looking. We need to rest, Mother. Her eyes dropped briefly to her stomach. It needs to rest too. Then she disappeared into the bedroom. Maggie, I called after her. No answer came. Maggie, there's something I still need to explain, something you must understand. Still silence. I moved toward the bedroom, speaking with each step. I know it wasn't fair. I know I failed you as a daughter. Every mother carries burdens. Some become too heavy to bear. When we're young, we make choices believing life will eventually return what it takes from us. But time rarely waits for anyone. By the time I reached the doorway, I could hear her shifting inside the room. Please, she called back, exhaustion filling her voice. I'm done with stories tonight. Just let me sleep. I've already prepared the guest room for you. Her words were firm, though not cruel. She had simply reached her limit. This time I let the matter go. Perhaps she was right. It was far too late, yet she could not understand the weight of the guilt I carried. Sleep would not come easily anyway. There was too much value buried inside this story, too much truth. So I decided to write down the rest. Inside the guest room, I found an old notebook waiting on a small table. Something inside me whispered, sleep can wait. And so my thoughts returned to the hospital. The doctor's words still echoed in my memory. He had spoken carefully as though part of him still hoped Mother would somehow find her way back. She has gone into a coma, he explained. The prolonged trauma combined with severe depression has caused serious complications. What exactly do you mean by a coma? Naka asked. Before the doctor could answer, Uncle Martin spoke. She's standing between returning and leaving. Naka immediately turned toward him. You're not a doctor. True, the doctor replied with a faint smile, but I must admit he has described it exactly the way I was thinking. When I sat beside Naki, I felt the familiar distance between us. She seemed close enough to touch, yet somehow farther away than ever. Part of her was listening. Another part seemed desperate to reveal something she had been carrying for years. Her eyes gave it away. Father had once taught me how to read people's eyes. At the time, I had been too young to understand the lesson. Now, those old teachings were finally beginning to make sense. The same look she used to give me whenever I wandered too long around Malibu Trading Center suddenly returned to my memory. Back then, it had seemed like annoyance. Now I realized it had been something else entirely. A warning. When Naka followed the doctor for further explanations about Mother's condition, and Uncle Martin left the hospital with Mado, Naki finally spoke. Did Naka ever tell you anything about Uncle Martin? I looked at her and slowly shook my head. Nothing, Naki swallowed before continuing. So she still keeps it secret. A strange uneasiness settled over me. Naki leaned forward. Have you ever wondered why Mado remained in the village while she brought only you to the city after Father's death? I stared at her. The question had never crossed my mind. She rubbed her palms against her thighs. For the first time, she seemed nervous. After taking a deep breath, she spoke. "You're still young, Namu. But if I told you that Mado—" "Stop." Naka's voice cut through the air like a blade. Naki immediately looked up. Naka was already approaching us. Confused, I stared from one sister to the other. Naki slowly rose to her feet. "Did I hear you correctly?" she asked. The fire returned to their eyes. I swallowed hard. "Yes, you did," Naka replied. "She deserves to stay out of this." Naki laughed softly. For a moment, the sound carried no humor at all. "I used to think Mother was right." "Right about what?" Naka asked. "About you," Naki pointed toward me. "About your responsibility to protect her." Naka remained silent. Naki continued, "Protecting her." A long pause followed, then Naka spoke. "Anything involving Uncle Martin and Mado cannot simply be thrown at her." She stepped closer. Her voice dropped. "Father warned us about that, didn't he?" For the first time, Naki looked away. Naka turned to leave. Then Naki called after her. "So what?" Naka stopped. Slowly, she turned back. The annoyance in her eyes had become something much darker. Naki stepped forward. "What do you mean it has to remain secret? If Mado doesn't belong, then he doesn't belong. Father believing he should carry responsibility after his death doesn't change the truth." She pointed toward the hospital entrance. "Uncle Martin is his father." The words exploded through the corridor, and then a slap. The sound cracked through the hospital like thunder. At that exact moment, the entrance doors opened. Uncle Martin and Mado had just returned, and both of them had heard everything.